ladies from the Activity Continues podcast are here with us for some random ramblings. They are Amy Lotsberg, Megan Simmons, and Amy Piersak. Hopefully I got all your last names correct there. Amy Piersak goes by AP on the podcast, and we're going to go with that tradition here as well so that we don't have any confusion there. Mm-hmm. The trio talk about all things paranormal on their show, so we will be all over the map on this one. I believe you all are located in Minnesota. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. In the Twin Cities area.
Yeah. As our listeners know, anything that's below 60 degrees doesn't work for me.
It was
there
48
are not
today.
Enough parkas.
It does get brisk. It does get really, but this winter honestly has been really good. Like we've had 1 week where it was really cold, but then like today was my car registered 50. So I went out in a sweatshirt. I'm like, this is beautiful weather.
Yeah.
Here in Florida, we can tell when people are here from the north because when it's 50 degrees out, you guys are in t-shirts and shorts.
Yep. Shorts.
We're wearing our jackets and hats and scarves and gloves.
Flip-flops out. Yep.
Need some hot drink.
We're just at the beach going, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's that Minnesotan. We love it.
It comes out.
So you guys obviously have a paranormal podcast, and we always ask everybody, what got you each into the paranormal to begin with? Why don't we start with you, Megan?
So I wouldn't say I got into it. I would say it more found me. So it started in college. I rented a house with some friends, and one night I woke up and there was a black cloud in the corner of my room, kind of hovering. And then from then on, I would have dreams where I would wake up and everything was correct. The time was accurate. And then I just wouldn't be able to move. I'd be in the sleep paralysis. And then all of a sudden I'd snap out of it. And just, wake up and be able to move again. So I actually had a spirit attached to me. His name was Frank. He was from the 1800s, and he found me in Wisconsin. He was a farmer in Wisconsin, and he reminded me of his sister. And the reason I know this is because when I lived in South St. Paul in a house that had a lot of activity, I would hear footsteps upstairs. So I lived in the bottom part. It was a duplex. So I lived in the bottom part, and there was people up top. And I heard drawers opening and closing, doors opening and closing, footsteps were heavy. This was all in one night. And I knew my roommate was gone. And so I called her, and or not my roommate, but the upstairs neighbor. And I called her and I said, hey, did you come home? Like, did you bring your date home? Because I hear heavy footsteps. Like, it sounded like someone was wearing construction boots, just walking around, opening doors, like fixing dinner, opening drawers, getting silverware out. And so I called her and I said, are you home? Like, why are you home so early? And she said, no, I'm not home. So I actually called the police. And I said, I think somebody has broken in upstairs. I hear footsteps. I hear drawers opening and closing. Doors were closing. They came out, and it was the winter time. So there was, they looked for snow footprints all around, and they had nothing. I also had a mimic there. So I was in the shower one night, and my ex-boyfriend, I thought he came home because I heard the door open and close. And I talked to him and I said, oh, I didn't know you were home. And I said, hi, I didn't know you were coming home this early, and through the door. And he said, yeah, I'm home. No big deal. I'm just going to wait for you to get done. So I finished, showering, and I was drying off, and the door opened and closed again. And I went out and I said, where did you go? And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you were home. I was in the shower and you left. Did you go get cigarettes or something? Like, what happened? And he said, I just got home now. And I was like, 100%, it was his voice. It was his voice. We had a full-on conversation. He claims it wasn't him. And so I was like, what? What is going on? When I lived I lived all over. I lived in Texas and I saw a man. I was sleeping one night. My ex-husband he was in the military, so he was out of the house on an assignment. And I woke up and a man walked out of the bathroom, stood at the end of my bed, looked at me, and I'm like freaking out at this point. And I'm thinking, if I don't move, he won't see me. So I blinked and he was gone. And I can still see him. He was tall, skinny, with like shoulder length hair, probably my length hair. So he was there. I always felt somebody watching me. In South St. Paul, I saw a man at the end of my bed very frequently, which it turned out to be Frank. So eventually I called a paranormal society and I'm like, look, stuff's happening. I need to know what's going on. So they came out, they investigated, and it turns out that's when they communicated with him. And like I said, his name was Frank. He attached onto me in Wisconsin because I reminded him of his sister and he wanted to protect me. So I do think he got me out of situations. One point I remember sorry, this is really long. I was
No, it's not. We love hearing the stories.
Yeah,
I
you're
was
good.
in Madison, Wisconsin, where I lived briefly, and I was leaving the DMV. I'd just gotten my license plate changed, and the door opened to my car, and a girl got in, and she goes, "Can I have a ride?" And I said, "Sure," because I was silly. I know. And she sat there. She had a backpack, and she put her backpack in her lap. And this was before I moved to the Twin Cities, so Frank was still with me then. And she put her backpack in her lap and she stopped. We were at a stoplight and the light was red. And she stopped and she looked at me and she goes, "This is a really bad idea." And she got out and left. And I never saw her again. Yeah. So I
Weird.
That's strange.
didn't think anything of it at the time, but looking back and knowing what I know about Frank, was she going to do something to me?
Yeah.
Did he convince her not to? I mean, I'm not sure. So I went to Madison again with my ex-boyfriend for a wedding, and I was in the wedding. And so do you know those twirly beady things that you used to put in your hair and they were like decor?
Yes.
So I had those. They're very 90s, early 2000s. So I had those in my hair. And I had taken them out and I'd put them on the nightstand next to my bed. And my ex-boyfriend, had gotten up to go to the bathroom. It was, nighttime, we were sleeping, and a man came around the bed and bent down and like grabbed something off the nightstand. And I thought it was my ex-boyfriend who had come back and was getting chapstick or something. Well, then right after that, he walks in the room. And I said, "Where did you just come in and leave again and come back?" And he said, "No, I just came in." So I think it was Frank looking over the beads that I had in my hair, because being from the 1800s, he wouldn't have known what that was. So I also constantly will feel something walking on my bed at night. And I think it's my cat who passed away just coming to check on me. But it feels
Nice.
like a cat walking on my bed. And then the last thing I'll talk about is just a couple months ago, I was driving home and it was a nice day out. And so I had all my windows down and I was in rush hour traffic. So it was moving pretty slowly. It wasn't a standard, highway speed. And all clear as day, to my left, I heard somebody say hello. And I jumped. I was so scared. And I whipped my head to the side, thinking literally that a man was next to my car, peeking his head in, going, "Hello." Nobody was there. So I called Amy. And I said, "Amy, I'm so sorry to call you," because she hates talking on the phone. And I
Not a
have to
phone.
start every conversation with her that way. I said, "Amy, I'm so sorry I called you, but something just said hello to me." And she goes, "Well, did you ask it what it wants?" Never even occurred to me. And I'm like, "No, Amy, I'm freaking out." So we got off the phone and I talked to it and I said, "Hi, you scared me. I'm sorry for that. Is there anything I can do to help you?" Nothing from them. So I think that I think that sums it up.
Oh, that's pretty much nothing. I mean,
That's
golly.
it.
I mean, you've only had the
Quite a
holy
variety.
grail, as they say, seeing full-bodied
Yeah,
apparitions. And
yeah.
the
So
scariest thing there you talked about was that mimic. I
it
don't like
was.
things like that because it's like, why are you trying to fool me?
And you're not
Mhm.
supposed to engage with them. And if I'd
Mhm.
known it was a mimic, I wouldn't. But you guys, I will swear that I thought it was my ex-boyfriend at the time. Sounded exactly like him, to the point where he had a slight lisp, It was there.
My goodness.
How about you, AP? How did you get interested in all this paranormal stuff?
You mean I have to follow Megan?
You have good stories.
Thank you.
I walked into this room and had a creepy feeling. And next.
And here we go.
Your turn.
No, for me, it was more just getting interested in how things work. My background is I was a science teacher and really got into like understanding how things work. And so it's kind of always been there for me. I think my dad he's got really vivid dreams, and sometimes I will get those, but he's got dreams like, um, last year I lost my dog, and he had a dream about all the dogs that we lost, but he couldn't open the glass door. And he saw like his sister on a hill way behind him shaking her head like, it's not your time, you can't come out yet.
Did his sister passed away?
His younger sister, long
Oh.
before I met you. So he has a lot of those things, and he doesn't fully believe what all of it might mean. But so it's kind of always been in my background to think through those kinds of things. But I also really loved the Tales from the Crypt and Are You Afraid of the Dark when I was a kid. You know, growing up in the 90s, those shows, was it the Scary Stories to Read at Night or whatever those ones were, with the girl with the green scarf, like just kind of the stories that get you kind of thinking about those things. But really the first one that ever meant something to me, and now looking back, I see some other things that I'm like, that was not normal. That was something out of the ordinary. The night we moved into the house where I still live at, my grandpa died. And so it was my grandpa on my dad's side. And the phone call came in at 3:19 in the morning is what I remember it being. 319 was our previous house address, which he had helped build the house. And
Wow.
so like I have number association with a lot of things too. Like that just, it clicks to me. And a couple months later, this was before I had any dogs or cats or anything sleeping in my room. We had them. They were just not in my room. I felt the edge of my bed, the depression, like somebody was sitting on the end of the bed, rise up. And then I heard a shuffling sound across the carpet, and something knocked into a box that I still hadn't unpacked near my door. And then it stopped. And I remember sitting up, but I wasn't terrified. I wasn't like, my first instinct was grandpa. And so I'll say that most of my experiences have all been in the positive way, where I've never felt creeped out. I've never felt scared except for one. Most of it, if I'm getting scared, is I'm scaring myself kind of thing. And a lot of the stuff that I have is more of that like gut instinct or intuition of something like, I need to tell somebody this right now. Like, I need to tell you this right now. I have a lot of people that just pour their souls out to me for some reason. My dental hygienist a couple of years ago, she just like told me stories that she's like, I haven't even told half my family any of this stuff. Like, I don't know what to say. I'm here for you, I guess. So there's just been a lot of experiences. And I know, Diane, listening to one of your recent episodes, you talk about like feathers or butterflies and cardinals. I also think that cardinals are a big sign for me. I've seen them a lot of times after I've lost dogs, or like one was a Boone, our Gordon setter. Before Kiri, one of my dogs, came home, I saw two cardinals sitting at this little hidey hole that he used to hide in, and he would run back behind, and nobody else knew where that spot was. But there was two cardinals sitting out there after I'd been looking at pictures of him. So to me, that was just a sign of like, yep, still here. And after I lost Briggs last year, who was my heart and soul dog, I went for a walk the next day, just a meander. I didn't have a point of where I was going. Went down a path I never went before and found a hawk feather, plain as day, laying in the middle of the path. And
Nice.
to me, that was just like, he's okay. He's safe. So not quite as drastic or like intense as Megan's, but just a lot of little things that have come up over the years that when I look back, I'm like, that may be something else at work here.
Well, AP, I know that I've heard you mention on your podcast that you said you were a science teacher. I believe you said middle school, which to me is probably more terrifying than going into a demonically infested building.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No doubt.
You never know what's going to come out of an 8th grader's mouth.
She's
Sometimes
the bravest of us all.
Sometimes they say the sweetest things, and other times they're flicking boogers at the wall. Like,
Nice.
I also
It's true.
love that you're a science teacher because that opens you up more to being on the skeptical side, I would think, because science is like, no, none of this stuff is real. So did that, I mean, how have you worked that out with being a science teacher previously and having
She
weird
shoots down
experiences?
everything.
my mom's a nurse and my dad was a teacher. So like a lot of the logic comes in. I'm also an emotional person, but I have to let my logic brain take over so that I can make it from one point to the next point. And it's probably compartmentalization of some sort, but it is that desire to understand how things work. And if I can't find how something works, then there's got to be something else. That's why, like, if you listen to us at times, I'll be like, I don't know about this, but could it have been this or this that could cause that to happen? And I do believe, because I've had my own experiences. We had pictures. I wasn't home for this, but all the pictures on our mantle that weren't touching each other fell off one by one. All the glass broke out of them. My mom watched them. My mom and dad watched them fall off. Somebody was trying to get our attention there. And I wasn't home for that, but I was like, that happened, obviously. And there's no explanation for it. We've had our doorbell used to ring after my grandpa passed. Again, we moved in just after my grandpa passed, and it only would ring on days where, like, my grandma was sick, birthdays, or holidays. And my super skeptic, like worse than skeptic Greg, cousin would say, oh, that's just somebody's garage door opener malfunctioning. I'm like, then why is it not happening more consistently? And then after my grandma passed, a year and a half later, it hardly happened again. I mean, you could be standing right next to the door and the doorbell would ring and you'd be like, what do you want? I don't know what you want.
Just to say hello.
Yep.
Checking in.
And I do believe that he was there and for a lot of what was going on. My grandma saw him. They argued a lot. Like, she'd be in the kitchen, he'd be in his recliner, and she'd yell, Ed! And he'd fake sleep. He'd open one eye and look at me. It'd be like, shh. And he was always out cleaning the garage. So apparently she had a dream before she passed, and he was in the garage getting out the other lawn chair, getting ready for her.
That's sweet.
Wow.
That's great.
Yep.
Hey, Amy, how did you get into the paranormal?
Well, I feel like it's kind of just always been something I've been interested in. My dad was an actor, and he was always into theater and movies and stuff like that. So I was always watching movies and things when I was younger, and he kind of instilled that the sort of paranormal, ghosty, all that kind of stuff in me. When I was little, he used to make haunted houses for me in the attic and walk me through them and try to scare me. Yeah, he was always trying to scare me. And I loved it. It didn't scare me at all. I just was going over my things today to tell you, and I remembered that when I was little, one of my favorite albums that I would listen to fall asleep was a Disney album called The Thrilling, Chilling Sounds of the Haunted House.
Oh,
I don't know whoever told us that. That's new to me.
I'd forgotten all about it, to be honest.
Explains
and
a lot.
Found it yesterday. No, it does. I found it yesterday and on YouTube, and I started playing it, and I remembered every word. I was like reciting it with the narrator. And so, yeah, I used to sleep to that, and it's scary. I mean, it's a sound effects album, but it starts off with a story about how you are going to a haunted house. you are pulled to go to this haunted house, and it kind of tells the story of going there. And it's really scary. I listened to it again yesterday, and I was like, I can't believe I listened to
I'm
this
not
when I
gonna
was like
sleep.
5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but to be fair, a lot of those movies from when we were kids, the damage they did to us.
Mhm.
Oh, I know.
That's why we are the
I
way we
know.
are as adults.
I know. It's true. It's true. But so I always had that when I was real little. And then I never had any experiences when I was real little, except when I was in about 4th or 5th grade. I was at my mom's, well, obviously I was at my mom's house. It was my house too. And
Then she
I
went
was-
across the street to her house and went to bed.
Wow, it's amazing. You raised yourself.
that's right. I kind
3
of
years
did.
old.
I'm Gen X. I did raise myself. But I was playing there's a little forest next to the house, and I was playing around out there. And I was with my best friend in 4th or 5th grade. And I saw standing up next to a tree, a woman that was all in white, like long white, like a dress, long sleeves, all the way down to the ground. And I couldn't see her face. She didn't have any real features. And I called to my friend and I'm like, look, look, look. And she saw her, or she said she did anyway. And then she just disappeared.
Wow.
And that was the
Wow.
first time I ever saw anything. And I was like, okay, there's something going on here.
Mhm.
And then I did see other things. I had an apartment in college where I had a cat, and she used to play with things that weren't there. She would just bat at stuff and play like she was playing with another cat, and there was nobody there, or that I could see anyway. And then also at that apartment, I had a big coffee table next to in front of the couch, and I was sitting there watching TV, and I looked down, and the remote just slid really fast and fell off the table. And the cat was not around. It was not her. And then I did live in quite haunted house, for several years, 13 years. My husband and I lived, and he's a skeptic. He's Skeptic Greg, who
Mhm.
one of these guys mentioned. And he has had stuff happen to him, and he still doesn't believe anything. And one of the things that happened to him, it happened after it happened to me, but I would be laying in bed, half asleep or waking up, and I would hear something yelling in my ear. And it would just be like, I couldn't tell if it was far away and they were screaming or if they were whispering up close. But it was like, hey, mate. And I would startle awake, and then I wouldn't hear it again. And one time it happened to Greg. And I had been sleeping in the guest room because he snores. And I was in the next room, and he told me in the morning that he heard somebody yelling his name, and he thought it was me. And he got up to see what I needed or why I was yelling. And he went into the guest room, and I was fast asleep. But he still doesn't believe.
It drives me crazy about men because you
Mhm.
hear that story a lot, and yet in the paranormal, it seems to be so male dominated,
Yeah.
Right. Right.
and yet we hear it all the time.
Yeah.
You'll hear the wife will be like, this and this and this is going on, and their husband's like, oh, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Or
It's your
they'll say,
imagination.
me and the kids have been experiencing all this stuff, and he just is like, whatever.
Yeah.
There'll be a remote floating by his head, and he'll be like, "That's explainable."
Yeah. He will explain
Thanks for
everything away.
bringing it over.
Yeah.
I was
Oh,
going to
you-
say he was trying to find it in front of his face and couldn't find it. And the ghost finally was like, it's
Oh,
right here, you
It's
fool.
right here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
he
We
does have-
joke about Skeptic Greg
Yeah.
because, like, and I tell Amy, I'm like, he's literally had stuff happen to him.
And just tonight, I said, hey, I'm going on this show. Help me remember if there's anything I missed. When we were at the house, the Gerard house, we call it. That was the
Mhm.
street name. And I'm like, we got this, we got this, we got this. And I said, oh, and that time that they were hollering, the ghosts were hollering in your ear. And he goes, oh, yeah, that was probably just me. What?
He yelled in his own ear.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Explain it, Greg.
Yeah.
Make
So-
it make
You
sense.
hallucinate a
know.
lot.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, in that house, I also, right after we moved in, there was a big staircase in the front of the
Oh, it was
house, like coming up
beautiful.
the floor. It was a really pretty old Victorian house. And as I know it's beautiful. And as I
it
was
was
walking
gorgeous.
up the stairs the first time, I saw, only for a brief second, a woman hanging from the ceiling.
Oh my
Big
gosh.
Oh
from
my.
her neck. Yeah.
Wow.
Great.
And she disappeared. I never saw her again after that. Just that one time.
Was she like the bent neck lady?
I was just gonna say
Kind
that. Are
of,
you
yeah.
sure you weren't thinking of Hill
This was
House?
10, 12 years before that came out. But yeah,
That was
I don't
Hill,
remember her
right?
neck or anything, but I only saw like she was kind of swinging a little bit. And I
Oh
only
my
saw like a little bit. Yeah.
And that would have been the last day I lived in that house.
Well,
I would have walked out and
it
been like,
didn't
I need a
seem
new one.
scary. I don't know. For some reason, it didn't seem scary. I don't know. And the people that lived in that house before us, I sent them a message after we moved in, and I just like, by the way, have you ever had any paranormal things happen in that house? And they wrote back, they're like, why?
So yes.
Like they didn't want to tell me. And I said, because I have had this and everything that I had, they're like, yep. Like I used to smell fresh cigarette smoke in the guest room. And I'd seen people in the dining room. And there was one time when I was standing in the living room and there was a big mirror over the mantle. And I was glancing around, cleaning up. My parents were coming over and I was cleaning up. And I saw in the mirror, it was either like a black fog or it was like a bunch of birds or bats or something all together moving around at the top of the mirror. And I was like, what the heck? And I turned around and I thought maybe it was like a reflection of my parents coming in the front door. That's what I thought it probably was. And so I went out there, there was nobody there. And then like 10 or 20 minutes later, they called me to say they were leaving from home to come over. So it was not them. It wasn't anyone
Guess
else.
not.
Yeah. So
Have you?
yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just really curious. Did you ever have any intelligent hauntings that you could identify, or were they just other experiences like that were possibly residual?
I personally, I did. Well, I had one in that same guest room that used to smell like fresh cigarette smoke. I woke up one night and middle of the night, and there was a woman standing next to the bed and she was looking at me kind of lovingly as if she was taking care of somebody in the bed or something. But as soon as she knew that I saw her, or I assume, maybe it was just residual, but she disappeared. As soon as I was like, what are you doing here? She disappeared. I have never actually had like an interaction really.
No,
Except
what about
I
the
haven't.
piano?
Piano.
The ghost that was playing the piano at your house and you yelled at it to stop?
No, that was when that's okay. So no, I yelled at the ghost to stop yelling in our ears. And I said, if you're trying to contact us, find a different way because that's annoying. I need my sleep. And then I had bought a piano and I said, I bought you guys a piano. If you want to do something, play the piano. But they never did.
Oh, I thought they did.
No.
Okay.
I
made
wanted
it
them
up.
to. Yeah.
This is why we have AP to keep me in check when I just create stories.
But I didn't have anything but my there is a story that when we sold that house, my friend Melissa is a realtor. She and her husband were our realtors who helped us sell the house. And during the open house, she met a spirit in our house and had a conversation with him. And turns out he was a notorious gangster that was a big deal around Minneapolis in the 1930s.
Wow.
And she had never heard of him before. She talked to him. He told her his name. She was trying to like understand what his name was because what his name is Kid Can. His real name is Isidore Blumenfield, but his gang name or whatever, his gangster name is Kid Can. And when he told her his name was Kid Can, she didn't know. She kept saying Cam, like Cameron. And he's like, Kid Can. And so but she still wasn't getting it. And then she said when she left the house, she was Googling it on her phone and she was typing in, because she knew he was a bootlegger. He told her he was a bootlegger. So she looked up Minneapolis bootlegger and Kid Can came up and she's like, that's who it is. That's who it is. So yeah, not for me. She's way more sensitive than I am, but I haven't had anything quite like that. I wish.
Are those little ghost lights on the wall behind
Yes.
you?
Oh, I should have turned them on. I forgot.
They're so cute.
So
They are really cute.
I can't believe you got Megan and Amy have both seen full-bodied apparitions.
Yeah.
I've
And
only
we go
seen
into
ones of
places
dogs.
looking for them, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have yet
That's
to
the
see
thing.
a full-bodied
The
apparition.
crazy thing is like they scare the bejeepers out of me. And I'm like, I'm so interested in them, but at the same time, like it like terrifies me. And there's people who are like, I want to see them. And I'm like, go talk to them. Like, I'm really interested in you, but can you be nice? Like, don't walk ominously from the bathroom to the end of my bed. Stop, turn, and look at me, Frank.
Frank. It's always
He-
Frank.
It's always that darn Frank. He moved on though. So and since then I haven't felt him, which I kind of miss now that I know that he was protecting me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. I think you mentioned a lot of times, Megan, that you're always going for the depends or, you know,
Mhm.
stuff like that. And I'm like,
I told her
well,
she
doing
couldn't
a
say that phrase that
podcast-
she always says.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
I'm like,
Doing a
yes.
podcast on the paranormal is probably not a good idea
know.
because, you know, you're going to be expected to go into haunted locations. I have to
They-
say, I used to be a lot more afraid until we started doing investigations.
Mhm.
And kind of like Amy said, well, and AP too. I mean, I don't think any of you've had anything that's been like really terrifying experiences. Definitely nothing demonic necessarily.
Oh, thank goodness. No.
So actually, I left this out because it's really, I felt I had a lot. But so I lived in the Middle East for 2.5 years, and I lived in an apartment, and I had a lot of terrifyingly real nightmares there. One nightmare I had, I remember to this day. This was probably 13 years ago, but I was and in every nightmare, it was like I was awake. It was very real. And I remember one time I was scared in the dream, and there was this huge armoire next to my door, like ginormous armoire. And so I passed it in the dream on the way out, and this black ball rushed out of it, shoved me against the door, and screamed in a demonic voice, "This is mine. Get out." And I didn't sleep for a week after that. I would have dreams where I had 2 cats in the Middle East, and I would have dreams where the door was shut, or I would not dreams, but the door would be closed, like locked, and it didn't have one of those pull down handles that animals can get, jump on and pull down. It had a twisty handle. And I'd shut the door and I'd wake up and the cats would be in my room and the door would be open. Numerous times that happened.
Wow.
So that one in the Middle East, in that specific apartment, I had a lot of very terrifyingly real, vivid nightmares where something was coming at me.
Do you think it could be like a Djinn?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Because it only happened in that apartment. And it has not happened since I got back. So I 100% think it was a Djinn.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
had
and here I was just going to say, well, we haven't had anything terrifying happen to us, so we're not really afraid when we go into haunted locations. But I can see why you're a little
Yeah.
bit scared now, Megan.
Well, this is probably why AP and I would love to do an investigation. Megan,
Mhm.
probably not so much, but
Mhm.
I would
wouldn't-
love to do an investigation.
if I knew that I could do an investigation and nothing would attach to me, that's my biggest fear,
Mhm.
is something attaching to me and coming home. Stuff happening during the investigation, that's to be expected. It's literally what you're there for. But I'm just worried that something will attach to me, because I've had those experiences and I'm open to it and come home.
I did get to do one teeny tiny little investigation when it was part of a tour at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park. And it
Nice.
was in 2022, they had just started the Stephen King tour. And so learning all about Stephen King and The Shining and everything there. So they take you into the old employee barracks, and which were not air conditioned and stunk to high heaven because it was the
Ooh.
male dormitories.
Gross.
Yep.
Enough said.
And everyone I was with, they're like, okay, well, supposedly the bathroom here, there's a lot of they get some activity. And they're like, who's going in there? And everyone's like, Amy, like, all right. I just go in there and I was like, nothing happened while I was sitting in there. But we came back into like the big living room area and they brought out a spirit box. I've never used one of these before.
Mhm.
And they're like, hey, do you want to ask the questions? I'm like, yes. I faked like, anybody else want to do it? You know,
As you
As you're
Give me.
glaring at everyone, no, you
give
don't.
me. And so we did that, just asked a couple questions, and actually we got a response that came through, and the two guides looked at each other and go, did you just get a voice? So it was somebody saying like, I'm here. And
Mhm.
so that, you know, we didn't have much time, but sat down and was like, is there anything else you want to say? And, or is there anything you want to tell us or something like that? And it was just like, it flipped through it a couple times and we heard one other thing and I can't remember what it was, but it was kind of cool just getting the, I'm here. And
is
the way
really
that the
neat.
guides were like, did that just happen now? Okay.
Yeah, we really
Oh.
enjoy using the spirit box with the Estes method.
Mhm.
You're really good at that. Diane
Yeah.
is.
And probably why they were surprised is generally it takes a little bit of sitting around for a while before you're going to get something to come through that quickly.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I was sitting in the bathroom going, hey, if you want to talk, now's your chance. Like, I'm totally open for this. I know everybody else is kind of scared, but tell me your story.
Well, clearly you've been to the Stanley Hotel, AP. Is there another haunted location that you have on your bucket list that you're like, I need to go to this place before I join the afterlife myself?
Oh, I mean, there's so many places I've been to. Estes Park was fun. That was actually on a work trip, and went with a couple of my coworkers on that tour. Uh, the Greyfriars Kirkyard in Scotland in Edinburgh is fantastic as well. There's
Oh, I'm jealous you've been there.
yeah,
I've been there too.
October of 22, and did one of the tours where we actually got to go into where supposedly Mackenzie poltergeist haunts inside of the prison yard that they kept all the, I can't remember the names, Covenanters, the
Is it
Covenanters.
the yes.
Yep. And just, I love those kinds of things. I know that they can be kind of hokey, but I love history. I love hearing the history of the areas and all the things that could go into it that I'm
Mhm.
sure could go bump in the night. And so it's, haha, play on that.
Ah.
But there's a couple places like in Minnesota, there's like the St. James Hotel. I would love to stay there. Glen Sheen, though they claim that they're
Mhm.
not haunted, that if you ask anyone there, they will say they are not haunted.
They're haunted.
Okay.
They're haunted. Mhm.
Yeah.
It's haunted.
Yep.
They're just not supposed to say anything.
Yep. I was stayed at the Lutzen Lodge before it burned down just a couple weeks ago, and had some very interesting experiences there. But I think there's the sanitariums and other, asylums. Love to go to Alcatraz. I want to go to Alcatraz so
Yeah.
much.
Did you guys all meet and create this podcast? Were you friends way before? I just kind of wanted a little bit of that history.
So Amy and I actually worked together. She was an office manager and I was a little baby recruiter at a local staffing agency. So we met there back in 2015. And we kind of chatted in passing, nothing really in depth. And then I think one day, I have memory like Dory. So I think one day I asked Amy what she was listening to.
Oh, it was a podcast.
It was
Oh,
a
it's
podcast.
earbuds
And
then.
yeah. And so that's how we discovered we both like murder and true crime podcasts. And so we just kind of started there. And then she started cooking and telling me about, dishes she made. And I would regale her with my dating experiences. And here we are almost 10 years later.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that
I
long.
know. And then AP and I met similarly through a Facebook group, true crime Facebook group. They had a meetup was it 2021?
2020. It was right before the
2020.
pandemic.
It was right before the
Mhm, right,
pandemic.
yeah.
In January of 2020.
And we met at a meetup and we started chatting about paranormal. And she said, I go to a psychic. And I said, oh my God, I want to go. And here we are 4 years later.
Yeah. We started the
Nice.
podcast because I had found the TV show The Dead Files, just flipping through the channels one day during the pandemic when I wasn't working and all I did is watch TV. And I started watching the show and I was texting Megan every day, you have to watch this show. You have to watch this show. And she's like, fine, fine. So she started watching it. And I had been watching like 2-3 episodes a day. So I'm on like season 4 and she's just starting. I'm like, I know she wants to go in order, start the beginning.
Yes, I have to go in order.
Which I do too, but I'd already done that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, they're not connected. You can skip around. And she's like, but I can't. I'm like, but you have to, because I need to talk to somebody about this show. And so she finally would start watching them. And then we would talk about the show, or we'd text each other about the show. And one day I was like, I know, why don't we do a podcast where we just talk about this show? And
I was like, in all caps, that's the best idea I've ever heard.
ever.
And when I watch a show and I'm texting someone, I feel so bad for them because I'm literally like stream of consciousness, texting every thought I have goes into the phone. And so I always apologize to Amy. I'm like, I'm so sorry. This is who I am. I can't change. And so every thought I have. And so she was like, let's do a podcast. And I'm like,
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And then AP started listening and she would.
First off, it was Megan goes, we're going to start a podcast. Can you listen? I said, okay. I was
So
like,
we have one listener.
Yes.
I was like, what's it on? And she's like, The Dead Files. I'm like, I've been trying to tell somebody to watch the show for years because I started at the beginning. So
she would.
AP's an OG.
She is an OG. Yeah.
Of
So she
TVF.
would listen and then she'd message us after. And like, I just listened. And she's, you know her, she's logic. And so she's like, actually, this is what this was. And I love what you said here. And so we just started joking, like, and AP's probably yelling at us when she's listening. And then last year, Amy asked me, she's like, what do you think about bringing AP on the podcast? I'm like, literally the second best idea you've ever had, aside from starting this podcast. So now she's our fact checker. And so if we're chatting, she'll be doing some little side research. And she's so smart. She knows so much that I'll say something and she'll just be like, actually, it's this. But she doesn't do it like, she's just like, let me actually inform you, not like a jerk way, but
my
teacher
family.
way.
Yeah,
a
my
teacher
family
way.
gets
Exactly.
tired of the science lessons and I have to like somebody at work. I work in agriculture now and somebody will say something and I'll be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I am so sorry for the science lesson you just got. And they're like, no, I actually didn't know that that's how this went to this to this. So.
And she always apologizes and we're like, that's why we brought you. Like you bring so much information. I'm just like, oh my gosh, a ghost. And AP is like, that's a sheet hanging from a rafter. And I'm like, oh yeah, I see it now. But so we're a really good mix, I think, because I'll believe anything. AP is like, I won't believe it until I can literally exhaust every logical explanation.
Run to exhaustion.
And Amy is right in the middle there.
Yep. I want to believe everything, but I do have a healthy bit of skepticism.
Yeah, I don't.
But if you can prove it to me, I'm totally on board.
Yeah, you're an open-minded skeptic.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, for you, Amy, is there a haunted location that's on your bucket list? I got to get there.
If I could do an actual investigation with an investigative team, I would want to go back to the house I lived in.
Yes.
The Victorian house in Uptown Minneapolis, because I didn't know enough at the time to do anything about it. I just saw stuff, but yeah. I like AP was saying, I also would be super interested in any of the sanitariums or the Waverly or any of those kind of because those are the ones that freak me out the most. The people that have been there that were, under horrible conditions and all of that, I think that would probably scare me quite a bit, but I'm here for it. I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I always tell people when I went into Waverly Sanatorium, I was terrified walking in because it was like, you just look at the outside of the building, the history, you're like, this is going to be terrifying. And I walked out of there and had one of the coolest experiences in my life.
That's awesome.
Was not scared at all. It was one of the first times that I had an experience where I, went in on purpose to try to have something. And there were 40 of us that were in our group. And the story about I guess he was a veteran who was homeless. So he was living there with his dog, and these creep kids came in and ended up beating him up and throwing him down the elevator shaft. And they decided to kill the dog too.
Not the dog.
Yeah. And the tour guide is telling us this story, and we're standing in front of the shaft where it happened.
Yeah.
And I hear what sounds like a dog whimpering, but I'm also like, maybe it's door hinges.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're not thinking that, oh, she's telling me a story about a dog. My brain is making this up. And so I'm like, well, there's a door at the end of the hall, which is still kind of creepy, because why is the door like creaking and opening? And then I heard what I was like, no, that's definitely a dog whining that I'm hearing again a second time. And then right before I heard it the third time, the tour guide goes, is anybody else hearing that? And everybody else goes, yeah, is it a dog whining? And I'm like, all of us are hearing it. I went, that's amazing, because it's like audible. It's not an EVP that you hear later. It was in real time. And because everybody's hearing it, you're like, nope, I'm not imagining it, because we can't all be having the same hallucination.
And that's really, it takes a powerful spirit to make that many people hear you.
Which my brain would have then been like, where's the dog that's injured right now? I need to go and find it. And somebody would have been led astray to go and find. You got puppies? Okay, I'm going to find them. Okay.
We need to put a bell on AP anytime we go in public, because she'll be like, ooh, puppy,
I do that too.
It's true. Yeah.
Megan, do you have a haunted location that you've been dying to go to?
I am not as brave as those two. I would not want to go into a sanitarium. I think it would be really interesting to do like a castle in Europe that's had a lot of history, because the United States, we're a baby country compared to literally the rest of the world. And I think it'd be really interesting to go to, a castle in Germany or Scotland, the UK. I think that would be really interesting, because not all the apparitions that are going to be there and the spirits are going to be negative the way that I feel, or hurting the way that I feel the spirits in a sanatorium would be.
Sure. As you guys mentioned, one of your focuses on the podcast is the show The Dead Files. You do talk about other things as well. I have to say, out of the plethora of paranormal shows that are on, that is one that I've gravitated to as well, because I love the premise of you have somebody who is just your regular old person, no psychic, not really even interested in ghosts, a police officer. So it's like, this is, they're not going to be prone to believe in that stuff. Plus they know how to investigate the history of things and find out the back information. And then most of the time when it comes to psychics, I can be very, very skeptical about it. Kelly's helped me to become more of a believer, because she has some
good job,
sensitivity
Kelly.
as well. So I'm like, she's clicking on things in such a way that I'm like, maybe there really is something to this. But Amy is one of the few that I'm like, I really feel like she has abilities, as long as, the whole premise of she has no idea what's going on before she goes in there is true. And I would think that she is being honest about that. She seems that way. For you guys, when you, I know I listened to one of your most recent episodes, and is her name Laura? I think it was, where you find out, okay, maybe Steve and Amy, they're trying to be legit, but then you get into the production. And I think that's where you run into a lot of issues on a lot of these shows, is that these people aren't in it for the same reasons we are. Like, we have real questions. I really want to know. I'm not just in there to be scared. You see some of these TikTokers and stuff that like they do the picture with the scared face, and they're just going in with their phone apps, and it's like, no, I legitimately want to go in there and figure out, why is this happening, do some scientific stuff. So what is your thinking on that when it comes to production versus the real investigators and such? And any of you can jump in.
I'll go first. I think that, and I don't want to speak solely for the other two, but for me, I really get upset when it happens like that, because, with the Dead Files, these people who are reaching out to them want help, for the most part. They're really looking for some answers and a way to move forward. And so, Amy and Steve, I think, do have their hearts in the right place and they do want to help them. And so when the production crew or whoever it is sort of puts that spin on it, that kind of upsets me because, we watched one where what was aired and what actually was the history were like polar opposites. And that's kind of where, I really started to be upset because these people are reaching out for help. And that's why they're calling you and they're putting their trust in you, and for you to, not you, but for the production crew to spin it that way. I feel like it does a disservice to Amy, to the clients, and honestly to the spirits.
Mhm.
And a lot of those spirits, they just want help. They're reaching out to Amy and other mediums and other sensitives because these people can help them with whatever they're looking for. So that kind of, it just upsets me, and I feel like it really does a disservice to the show and the clients and the mediums.
To play off of that a little bit too, we had another client recently that came on and we were able to interview her, and the way that they came through in the reveal and tried to connect things that were happening to a specific spirit. However, her family was told there was a whole nother spirit that was causing all of these problems. Excuse me. And they tried to connect it to the older female ghost in the house or spirit in the house who just wanted to be part of conversations. They would smell baking around her. Like if she was near, she would come forward with the smell of something baking. They'd find her in the kitchen often because she lived there. She died there. She was a mother, a grandmother. She wanted to be part of their conversations. But the show turned her into the violent entity that was harming them. And, the client in this episode also said the family was very upset of the woman who had passed. Her two children were interviewed, and they were upset to see how their mother was portrayed, or how it was connected. And, it was like that kind of thing, just as Megan said, I get that there's effect for drama and, the cutting of how things are, but now that there's a little bit of the curtain coming down and we're seeing the man behind the curtain and it's losing some of its shine of now we watch some of the episodes and we're like, yeah, these things don't feel like one of these is not like the other. One of these doesn't belong. And you can kind of start feeling out where some of that is. But if you were just to watch it, you may not catch on to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't need more drama. We're talking about people whose houses are haunted.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't need to add drama to that.
No. And some of the things that clients have told us that have been cut out of the show, we're like, that's way better TV than what actually made it. Why did they cover that up? And I guess I was always afraid because as my husband believes that Amy and Steve talk to each other and they share ideas and that, that whole thing is untrue. And I don't believe that's true. And we've talked to clients who have said no indication that happens. But I guess we're still finding out things that are happening on the show that are maybe not all on the up and up, but the hauntings and that stuff is absolutely real. It's absolutely happening. There's no monkey business going on behind the scenes on that account. Now, once it gets to the editors, that's where everything changes. And that's where they spin the story to be what they want it to be, whether it's really what happened or not. And like AP was saying, this is, harming people's legacy. I mean, this poor Verna that they were saying was the woman that was torturing these people in the house. It wasn't her. It was somebody else that they didn't even talk about. And now her family is watching the show going, that my mom wouldn't do that. That's not my mom. And so that's, that part's not great.
At the end of the day, I think all three of us, we just want spirits to be respected. We want them to be, just honored, and we get upset if that's not being done, because they were people, they had lives, and for whatever reason, they're stuck either in their death state, they're stuck in a residual haunting, they're stuck behind. And so just give them the respect that you would any other person, you know, a living person. And when that respect gets lost, I think that's when we really, you know, get upset because they deserve it.
Yeah, we might swear in our normal lives, but we're not going to go into a place like some investigators who
Mhm.
might start swearing at spirits and call all of them demonic.
And yell at them and scream at them. And it's not right in our opinion.
Yeah, it's a bummer because Ghost Adventures, I watch a lot of it just because they have access that we can't get. And I
Yeah.
want to
Mhm.
see what the inside of these places look like so that I can
Mhm.
describe it and get a feel for it.
Oh, that's
And so-
smart.
It's like you kind of have to choke the other stuff down with that. I
Yeah.
feel like in the early on, they did a much better job than they are
Yeah.
doing now.
Yeah.
They were a lot more
100%
legit.
They did. Because they were
agree.
interested in actually communicating with the spirits and actually finding out. But now they're just in it, in my opinion, for the publicity and the show and, you know, all of that and the fame. And
Yeah,
So
we got we went to, I
Mhm.
think it was the McPike Mansion, and it was a couple of weeks after Ghost Adventures had been there.
Mm,
And the main theme of that show was how there was this between the woman who was the owner, Sharon, and the shaman woman who leads the tours, that there's this animosity and there's this negativity, and it's just building up and it's causing all this energy in there and everything. And Kelly and I are going, first of all, we had the most incredible experiences ever in there. I mean, we just
That's
love
awesome.
talking about it and
Yeah.
can't wait to get back there again. But we also interacted with both of those women, and we're like, they were perfectly, you could tell they were friends. They've
Yeah.
been doing this
Aw.
for a long
Yep.
time. And I'm like, what were they even talking about? And you hear then, like you say, you start to hear things behind the scenes later. And it's like, why are all these places saying you are persons non grata after you've been here? Like, what
Mhm.
did you
Mhm.
do? Not just
Yeah.
stirring up more
Yeah.
activity, but you must have done a lot of things that they don't want you to come back, where you would think
Exactly.
most places would be like, yeah, hey, please come back and let's see, you know, if we've gotten some of the activity to die down a little bit, or we want to get some more attention on us to get some more people coming. But they're like, no, we do
100%.
not want you.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, they
And-
absolutely said you are not welcome back.
No.
That
To
does
you
not
guys or
surprise me.
to Ghost
No,
Adventures?
no, no.
I was gonna say,
to
I don't
Ghost
think you
Adventures.
guys would do that.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and that
Yeah.
the Dead Files is experiencing, or they did the same thing, because in the beginning, 15 years ago when they started, or whatever, however long it was, 15 seasons
Math.
anyway. I'm not a math person,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
they started doing revisited episodes where they would go back to season 1 people, season 2 people, and ask them to come back and say, like, hey, how's it going? Did you get rid of the spirits? And da-da-da. And they did a few like that, and then it stopped. And I wasn't really sure why it stopped. And everybody was like, oh, I don't know. And even Amy Allen was like, I don't know. They just stopped doing it. We're finding from the clients that they were asked if the Dead Files could come back, and they said no.
Yeah.
So same thing. They are not, and not because of them stirring up anything or doing anything or messing up their closets, which they did, things like that, but that they don't like the way their story was told. It was messed with between what really happened and what ended up on TV. And they're like, I'm not doing that
Yeah.
again.
And it's not Amy and it's not Steve,
No.
because every single person we've talked to has said they are both very delightful to work with. Steve jokes with people. And if you watch him with kids, he's amazing with kids. He's amazing with people.
Mhm.
Amy, they say, is she'll like go, they say the reveals last hours upon hours, but they cut them obviously for TV, but she goes very in depth with them and she works with them. So it's not those,
It's not them.
it's not them.
And it's not most of the crew. Most people say
No.
the crew is wonderful.
Mhm.
It's
It's
the
the
production.
post.
It's the
Yeah.
post-production.
It's where and so a couple of our clients have said after their episode aired, they actually stopped watching it altogether. And I don't blame them. It's
No,
sad.
absolutely
It really
not.
is sad.
It's too bad.
It's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
it's very unfortunate.
Well, you all have had unexplained experiences. We get asked this question a lot, and we like to ask other people just to hear. This is just your own personal thoughts. But when you have these experiences, what is that? What is a ghost per se? And we'll start with you, AP.
To me, I see this as the experiences that so sorry about that. The experiences that I've had have been my loved ones for the most part. They've been somebody that has wanted to give an idea like, hey, I'm here and I'm still around. I think that it's to me, I think you get a choice. And if you want to hang around, and maybe not all of them, but in my way of thinking is I want to stay. Maybe some of it is that purgatory aspect, but from what I've experienced has been more of a like, hey, I'm going to be around and I'm not going to be around all the time, but if you need me, I'll come when you call me kind of thing. Um, my case in point was last week I was staying at my sister's house, which was the first time I stayed at my sister's house to watch her animals without Briggs or one of my other dogs with me. And I was feeling it. I was feeling missing him. And that night, I felt him at the end of my bed. I felt the footprints and the kind of like the step around and lay down. And he was a 60-pound dog and just felt the lay down next to me. And then later the next night, I felt he used to come up and crawl around my shoulders and protect me from storms. And he would come and lay up on my pillow. And I felt the pressure on my shoulder that was up. I sleep on my side. And I felt his paw, because he used to put his paw on my shoulder and put his head across my neck. And I felt that. And it was just like, that was like, I needed that for that moment. Sorry, I'm crying now. But I needed that at that point in time. And so to me, I think that there's something else that's out there, but when your family needs you or something, they're there. So I don't know if that answered your question at all, but that's how I feel.
That does. How about you, Megan? What is a ghost to you?
That's a great question. I didn't have time to prepare. I think a ghost is somebody who was a person for the most part in life and stayed around for whatever reason. Maybe they wanted to see how the world progressed. Maybe they were like, you know, what Amy thought, and a friend or a family member. And the encounters that I've had, aside from the dreams, have not been scary. So I think there's somebody who, you know, maybe wants to protect you, maybe wants to just curious about life. I definitely think that they are intelligent things, intelligent entities. I don't think they're just, you know, floating around. I think that they know what they're doing and they're curious.
How about you, Amy?
I think that it depends on the type of spirit we're talking about, because like AP was saying, you know, the visiting of loved ones and things that happen where to let you know, like the cardinal. I had a cardinal story or an incident happen too. When I was in the hospital in November, and I was sitting in my hospital bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm always awake between 3 and 4 a.m. I know that's the witching hour. Yep. I don't know why I'm always awake every night. And so I'm laying there. I was awake most of the night, but I got a little ding ding on my phone saying that it was the anniversary of my dad's passing. And I didn't put that all together because, you know, I wasn't thinking about dates and all that. And I was like, oh, and I just kind of like looked up and said, hey, Dad. And then I went and opened up my computer, and I had my laptop has a like rotating screen that has a different picture every day. I opened it up and it was a cardinal.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was
And we
just
know
like,
there's thousands of pictures that could pop up there.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Yep. It was very
100%.
weird. But so I think in that case, I think, at least this is what I want to believe, that when we pass, we go to some other realm and we can do whatever we want there, or we reunite with our spirit, soul family, whatever there. And we can still come down and say, hey, to our people that are here. And then when the people here, they're part of our soul family, we all go up there and we're together. And then we can, when we decide we want to, we all come back down or go to another time, another place, and have a lifetime together there. I do think there are obviously some other kinds of spirits or ghosts like that get stuck, that are like Megan was saying, is stuck in their death state, or they're stuck here because they have unfinished business and they have to figure that out before they can move on. And I think there's different types, and I think they're different. And I obviously don't know, but I hope that you're either moved on and you're on that other realm, but you can still see this one, or that you're just waiting to get to that other realm until you can get help from somebody like Amy Allen, who can help facilitate that.
Yeah, we run the gamut on all that stuff because I mean, I'm not just thinking human spirits, you've got other entities. And then, you know, when you see something that they'll call it residual, which it could be something that gets locked into your stone tape theory or whatever. But I also think sometimes we don't understand time and space. And all of that. And so you know, if you look up and you see that woman who's hanging there, is that a residual thing you're seeing, or are you actually folding back time for a moment and you're actually back in that time seeing what's happening
I never
there?
heard of that or thought of that. That's really interesting.
I didn't think of it that way. Now it's kind of scary.
See, I'm waiting for the moment when somebody stumbles across a journal from the 1800s and somebody writes in there, you know, I was standing in my kitchen making the stew and I turned around and there was this woman in these short sleeves and she was wearing denim, pants. She didn't have a dress on, you know, it's like infuriated. It's like, because I sometimes wonder when you see that woman in Victorian dress over there, is she seeing me at the same time? And we're both alive.
Wow.
But in different time periods in the same space. So we're there and we're seeing each other, but neither one of us is dead.
Right. Okay. That's trippy.
I
love it.
My friend Melissa, who met the gangster in my house, she said she felt that, and she thought about that later. She was like, they were talking. So she's like, when he's talking to me, is he going, what that girl's wearing pink pants? That's bizarre. Like, girls don't dress like that. And so, she said that she felt like that's what was happening. And that they were kind of past each other in some kind of weird
It does
realm.
make sense though, because, you know, we've heard multiple times that a spirit, in order to have intelligent interactions with people, is very difficult. So that's a really interesting thought, Diane, and I'd never heard of it before or thought of it before. I love it,
I think
though.
the only thing we've definitely figured out is whenever you get over to that other side, you clearly cannot tell us on this side what's happening.
Right.
Because we all
Big
ask,
secret.
we say when we get there, we'll let you know. And it never happens. So
it's like the only rule of Fight Club.
There.
Don't talk about Fight Club.
Diane, to kind of play into that, throw a little curveball at you too. I lost both my grandparents on my mom's side in 2 months this year, one in October and the other on Christmas Eve. And we knew once my grandma passed that my grandpa was probably not going to stay around too much longer. He was, in all intents and purposes, healthy. For a man who is 89, had heart disease, had diabetes, was not very active.
Other than that,
but
spry as a chicken.
He was walking and doing, living on his own kind of thing. But the night that he died, I heard knocks on my door. And I was in the dream. I was kind of in that in between of dream realm and awake. And it wasn't my bedroom door. It was the front door that I heard clear as day in my bedroom.
Weird.
And it was knock, knock, knock.
That reminds me of the interview you guys just did with Sean Grimm. And he mentioned that when his, I believe it was his grandmother, passed away, he heard the clock went off. Sorry, Amy, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, that's a great connection. And we don't know when exactly. He was in a rehab facility. So not in hospice. He was going to be moved to hospice. So we don't know the exact time that he passed. But I can tell you that it was before 4 a.m. when I heard those knocks. And then
Mm.
at 5, a little before 6, I heard my mom get up and leave, which to me, I knew that he had passed at that point in time. And she went to see the psychic medium that we've seen a few different times. She's only seen her once before, a
Mhm.
couple years ago, twice maybe. And she had an hour session with Jenny. And when she walked in, and Jenny knows her name, she doesn't know anything else. And she goes, "Okay, so mom passed, right?" And she goes, "Is dad passed too? Because I've got a pair in here and they're arguing, like they're talking and bantering back and forth." And then she talked about my grandma said that she doesn't have to worry. She's, not in pain, but there's gardens. She gets to sit out in gardens all day. And my grandpa was like, and she doesn't even have to take care of me anymore. And apparently grandma scoffed at that and was like, well, we still have to. And we would talk. Grandma, even as she was passing away from cancer, was making his dinner and putting his slippers on because he really could not fend for himself. And so when my mom said everything that she said, she could hear her mom saying those words. She could see her mom saying that, like sitting there going, okay, and now you need to tell her this, and you need to tell her not to feel guilty, and you need to tell her that she did everything she could and we're okay now.
Yeah.
So it was a good connection. And she actually got my grandma on my dad's side came through, who passed 20 years ago, and told her that she wished she could have told her how much she cared for her in life, but that wasn't her thing. She didn't tell people that she loved them that much. She would say,
Ah.
"I love you," but she didn't
Yeah.
overly go on it.
That's very cool.
Mhm.
I love hearing those family experiences because you hear that a lot, especially at the time of passing, that something happens, whether it's a knock at the door, the phone ringing, or, an alarm going off, something like that.
The
It's kind of
NASA
like they're,
clock.
saying goodbye as they're heading out,
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think that's really sweet. I really, really, when
Yeah.
when Sean told that story and when AP told that story, my stomach kind of dropped. Like, wow.
Mhm.
So
Very impactful.
Mhm.
100%. Yeah.
Well, gosh, we have had a great time chatting with you all.
We have
are
to.
big fans
Thank
of your
you.
show. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about where they can find out more about your show?
We can be found. Our website is theactivitycontinues.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter as at The Activity Continues, except for Twitter, who cut us off at the T. It's too
Activity.
long. I don't like to try and say it because it sounds wrong, but
It does. Yeah.
and we're on all podcast apps. So Spotify, Amazon, any other app you would download on your phone, Apple. Yeah. So we're everywhere.
Mhm.
At YouTube, we have all our video versions are on YouTube, and then the audio versions. Oh, and Spotify. Spotify has video too. That's
Awesome.
about it.
Excellent.
Well, thank you so much. We've really, really enjoyed talking to you, and we're so grateful that you invited us. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Yes, thank you.
We
And
were
Diane, I
happy to-
love your shirt from what I can see of it.
I just got it from Kelly.
I love it.
Oh my
that's
God.
fun.
I love it.
That's fantastic.
That's
Kelly's
excellent.
got good
It's
taste.
not just for Halloween.
No.
Yeah, no. I wear Halloween shirts all year.
Yeah, it's Halloween all the
Absolutely.
time around here.
Mhm.
It's the happiest time of the year.